future of radio. I'm Ben Calais Thompson. We're coming to you from Burke's Marketplace here on the Eastern Market area. Today is the opening day, but we're giving you a different kind of opening day. Our roundtable here, political analyst and regular commentator on the show, Sam Riddle, political director, Michigan Chapter, National Action Network, and of course, activist, community activist Nicole Small, also joining us here. There's a lot we want to talk about, but before we begin, though, tomorrow is Cesar Chavez Day, and March 31st, 1927, Cesar Chavez was born. In 2014, former President Barack Obama dedicated March 31st every year as Cesar Chavez Day. I want to kind of bring you a quick clip to a speech that Chavez gave at the University of Los Angeles in 1972. Take a listen to the voice of one of the preeminent Hispanic civil rights leaders of the 20th century.
For me to be here with you this afternoon to talk to you about some of the problems that we're confronted with, to bring you a message from the farm workers, and to ask you to support us. I want to acknowledge our brothers and sisters in back of me. I know that you're there. I can't turn back because of the mic. I also want to acknowledge your brother Michael Shapiro is here. He's running for Congress in this district. Had it not been for the boycott, we'd still be struggling to get the union built. When we left the fields to go on the boycott, the employers also went following us. And we went to the people of this country, we said in whichever way we could, with leaflets, going to meetings, to students, to union meetings, to church meetings, and everywhere and anywhere that they would have us, and we told the people in America, help us, we need your help. And they responded. And the employers came right after us. But they went to the public in a little different way. They went through slick slick paid advertisement, and we beat them. And after they found out that we could actually get people to boycott in this country, the only thing left for them to do was to come up with Proposition 22 that would essentially strip all those rights away from us and your rights to help us if it should be enacted. They took Proposition 22 right after we won the strike in Delano in July of 1970 and went to the halls of Congress in Washington and tried to peddle that piece of legislation, and only one old tired senator took it on.
All right, we'll bring it back to the panel. That was the voice of Cesar Chavez, the farm workers leader, activist, civil rights activist, one of the most preeminent voices for labor and farm workers, environmentalists, and so forth, speaking at the University of Los Angeles in 1972. Tomorrow is Cesar Chavez Day, based on a proclamation in 2014 that President Obama declared, making it every year to recognize the contributions of the many diverse Americans. America is a rainbow nation.
Absolutely. And the heavy point about Cesar Chavez is that here's the guy that was the Latino Gandhi, if you will. This is a guy that understood the power of labor. He understood that clearly that power was in the worker. Mm-hmm. And he made sure and fought for the rights of those workers in the field. Right. And that's why the irony of having such a misogynistic, xenophobic president like Donald Trump, with the type of immigration policies that run counter to everything that America says that she's about, is really something, because when folks walk into the supermarket one day and have to pay $5 or $6 for a head of lettuce, or $10 for a couple of, for maybe 3 or 4 tomatoes, right, it'll start to dawn on them maybe they should have taken another approach. But more importantly, Cesar Chavez fought for the human rights of workers in the field, right, doing what many Americans will not do.
But the other angle to that, Sam, and Nicole, you can chime in here, is that when you look at his activism, it showed back then the power of unions, the power of labor movement. And when we look at Detroit and in Michigan here, the last 2 gubernatorial races, Sam, Nicole, the labor lost. Mm-hmm. But labor is out of touch.
And labor lost because they've made bad decisions about the type of candidate, but with the United Farm Workers, what Chavez did was he made sure that through organization that workers in the field were never left behind, because he again understood the importance of organizing and again premising that organization basically on a real heavy human rights platform that challenged another form of slavery that migrant workers in particular were being subjected to. The labor movement in Michigan and throughout America right now almost got so elitist, it divorced itself, the labor did, from the very people that built the union movement.
Right.
And the issues of the people as well.
Exactly, that's my point.
Yeah, it's a totally different lens that they're operating from. So now you have UAW, who seems to be more concerned about not only their individual interests, but they really have a huge disconnect from the people. Look at the way that endorsements are conducted now. You know, there's no input and inclusion from the people. They find out at the last minute that this is who they're endorsing. They don't even know what the other candidates have to offer, you know, so there's no education piece. It's more of a dictatorship. Right. Take this and support it.
But you see, we saw the resistance to the misleadership in the UAW. I had the opportunity to work with Chrysler workers who rejected the negotiations that were taking place between Chrysler and the UAW, and they even picketed Solidarity House at Van Dyke and Jefferson. They put pickets up until the union went in and renegotiated that deal. And now when we look at what's occurring with the FBI and whatnot, and how Chrysler management working with corrupt UAW leadership, they were structuring deals making the UAW literally a company union. And the workers on the line could see through that. That's why they picketed their own union headquarters.
So, and Sam, you're right on point on that. So, Nicole, when you look at, you know, what really surprises me, I think, when you look at the last mayor's race, right, you had, I was surprised, I've not even seen that in a long time in the city. You had the entire labor cabal, you know, the different unions all supporting the administration of Mike Duggan for re-election. Now, the way I understand it, labor exists to serve as a check and balance to government.
That's right.
And to corporate excess and all of that stuff. And their job should not be to jump in the bandwagon or in the machine, the Duggan machine, or in the machine of any political administration, but to be on the outside fighting for their members and basically challenging that administration to do better. Even if that administration is headed by Pope Francis, they should not be in the bandwagon. They should be on the outside challenging that administration, ensuring that, you know, that they're doing what they're supposed to do. But now that you have the entire labor cabal in the mayor's camp saying, you know, we're endorsing the mayor for a second term, they really have no critique of this administration for the next 4 years.
But let's talk about what the purpose and their intentions were.
Right.
I don't think it was ever really about the people. It was about who's the best fit to support what our agenda is, independently of the people at the top. So when you talk about that, the people's issues were never included. The majority of them don't even live in the city of Detroit. Let's start off there. You don't even have people at the table. The majority of the people at the table for the union, when you do endorsements, if it's a local race, they should live here in the city. They should endorse some of the same struggles that their members do and the people on the ground and grassroots do. So that's the first disconnect that you have. Secondly, I think we did a poor job in the city of Detroit of making sure that we have a strong pipeline of leadership, educating our community. Yeah, that's right. So then they can have the resources and armament that they need to be able to fight back and to have a voice at the table. They're only doing this because they're being allowed to.
So, Sam,
it's not going to change.
So, Sam, Nicole takes us to a whole different vein of conversation. This is something that we've talked about, the lack of a bench in this city. The lack of a pipeline to train the next generation of leaders. And why you have the same negotiators and players at the table, and will continue to be at the table for the next 50 years.
Actually, what we have is a whole generation of handkerchief-head apologists for the status quo. And they have a vested interest in the status quo. And they could care less about, for example, poverty.
Right.
We should have the union movement in the forefront of combating poverty here.
Right.
You know, when we look at the sit-down strike in Flint, Michigan, that actually helped create the UAW, gave impetus for its very existence and whatnot, the manner in which the union movement, the UAW in particular, conducts itself now is totally counter to what originally spawned the UAW and the workers, the line workers, the rank and file. They are going to have to take over those unions. I mean, you can hear the grumblings right now in the rank and file, but those grumblings have to take an organized form, and they need to, quite frankly, get rid of status quo leadership.
But there's a difference between organizing and mobilizing. So I think a lot of times, even in the union and even in grassroots community, we do a lot of mobilizing, but we haven't done the planning and the organizing that needs to take place in the beginning. So now we get to a place where there's a lot of people at a high level of frustration, you know, in their angst, and they want to get out here and they want to have a voice, but you can't protest without a purpose, right? You can't fight a fight without a strategy.
Not true. As a matter of fact, if workers right now engaged in wildcat strikes, where there's disagreement with how the unions are moving, their agenda would be to shut down the line. That's their agenda.
But that's
and
from
then
the line.
You go in. The line is everything.
But we're talking from a line perspective.
No, this is not
That's
a
not what
theory.
he's saying.
My mother, I don't care what he's saying. My point is
But
that,
that's the
like,
question.
when you look at it, I don't even deal like that. When we look at
But
it,
just
what
because
is
you don't deal like
occurring?
that doesn't
What
mean
is
everybody else has
occurring?
to follow suit.
I'm not asking you to follow anything. I'm trying to deliver an analysis. The analysis is predicated on my mother having died, a 40-year member of the UAW over in Flint. I grew up in a union family, and the power of the union is to shut down the means of production until they get what they want. Whether it's decent wages, exactly, whether it's decent wages or whether it's new leadership, or whether it's how the leadership deals with the company, so that there's no question but that the union is not a company union.
But that is protesting with a purpose, though. That's absolutely protesting with a purpose.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that right now, if you want to get to the table, if we talk about building that pipeline for leadership within the UAW, that's a whole different ball game. There's a whole lot of massaging of relationships. You have to play a totally different game because they have created a safeguard for themselves to preserve what they think.
Right. But Detroit is also more than just union, though. What about throughout the city itself, civic leadership? You know where I'm going with this.
The majority of us don't even know what local government does, let alone state government or federal government. That is an issue. That's an issue. We come to gubernatorial forums, we come to state rep forums, and we're still talking about Mike Duggan or city council. So now what you're doing is you're creating a scapegoat for these candidates who probably aren't prepared and aren't qualified to do the job. Then now they can get off on easy street because you're not challenging them on the issues of the role that they're campaigning for. So that's a huge issue in our community as well.
Well, what is being qualified? Is being qualified being a rubber stamp, getting reelected because you're a rubber stamp for Mike Duggan? I mean, certainly longevity in office does not qualify one when one is not fighting to address the issues of a city wallowing in poverty, wallowing in systemic racism, wallowing in an education system that doesn't work. It's going to take drastic, direct action to change the manner in which Detroit and urban America functions. And that's not playing by rules that are not drafted for you. That's turning the sucker out city by city.
And that's talking about people driving politics instead of politics driving people. And that's going to come with a certain level of sophistication and education that our people need to understand. Listen, it doesn't need to be convoluted, right? So you ought to have 3 issues. What are our 3 issues? If I go to 5 different community organizations and I say, what do you want as a black community organization? I guarantee you, I'm going to get 100 different answers. That's a problem. We should be aligned with our messaging. The leaders need to come together at the table, too, and they need to coalesce around one agenda.
But are there any leaders in the first place?
That's not going to happen. There's no leadership.
And this is why we still have Mike Duggan.
Let's go to 13th Congressional District and show me the leadership there. But let's do this. Let's take some calls. LaShonda has a question or comment for Nicole Small and Sam Riddle.
Yes, when you mentioned Chavez, I could not help but to think of Dolores Ferreto.
Right.
And her story was incredible, and I hope that a conversation